The sound of the receipt printer at my job was the sound of my life being slowly used up. Click whir click whir. I was printing my boss's lunch bill while on hold with a medical supply company, ordering more things for my mother. Her doctor always said her condition was mild, but you would never know it from how my parents acted. My whole life was about serving them and my job. There was nothing left for me. That evening I went to my parents' house with groceries I paid for. The air always felt heavy there. My mother was on the couch with a blanket, looking fragile. She spoke in a weak voice, but her eyes were sharp and saw everything. My father talked about their struggles and how everyone must sacrifice. He always looked at me when he said that. The house was nice and clean, all paid for by me. The nurse who helped my mother gave me a look of pity before she left. Later, alone in my apartment, I looked at pictures of Japan on my laptop. It was my dream, my secret escape. I had a secret savings account for it. That night, after my father asked me to cancel plans with friends to do something the nurse could easily do, I finally did it. My hands were shaking as I booked a 2-week trip to Japan. It did not feel exciting. It felt scary, like I was doing something very wrong. The guilt was a heavy weight. What if my mother really got sick while I was gone? But I did not cancel it. The next day, a sunny Sunday, I went to tell them. I practiced the words in the mirror. It is just 2 weeks. The nurse will be here. Everything is paid for. I walked into their living room, my heart pounding. My mother was on the couch. My father was watching TV. I said I had exciting news. My mother's face immediately crumpled with hurt. My father muted the TV. The silence was awful. He leaned forward, his eyes narrow, and said, "You have got to be kidding me. You want to talk about a trip? Now? Look at your mother." I stood there, my words dying in my throat, feeling trapped in a cage I had built myself. I knew then that telling them was a mistake, and the real fight was just beginning. The teacup in my mother's hand rattled on the saucer. Her hand trembled as a perfect show of weakness. My father's cold silence turned into hot anger. I tried to explain. It is only 2 weeks. I saved for years. I deserve this. The word deserve hung in the air and made everything worse. My mother started to cry quiet, devastating tears. "I do not know how I will manage," she whimpered, even though the nurse was scheduled. My father paced and listed every sacrifice they ever made, making me seem like a terrible, ungrateful child. I tried to hold my ground. I pointed out that I paid for everything, that they could work but chose not to. This truth made him angrier. His face got red. He leaned close to me and jabbed a finger toward my mother, who was now having a weak spell. "You are so selfish," he roared. "How can you be so cruel, gallivanting around the world while your mother is sick? We need you here." Those words hit me hard. We need you. Not we love you. I was not a son. I was a thing they needed. Something inside me finally broke. I stopped talking. My face went blank. I reached into my pocket. My father sneered, thinking I was getting my car keys to leave. But I pulled out my phone. I started tapping the screen, my movements calm and certain. My parents stared, confused and angry, as I ignored them and focused on the glowing screen, the silence filling with a terrifying new possibility. I ignored my father's demands to know what I was doing. My world was my phone screen now. I opened the airline app and found my 2-week economy ticket. It looked weak. It was not enough. I tapped to change it. My mind was clear and cold. Selfish, he called me for wanting to live. I tapped upgrade. I saw the price for a one-way, first-class ticket to Tokyo. It was hugely expensive. It would use up a lot of my savings. And that felt right. This was not a trip anymore. It was a statement. No return. I bought it. Then I opened my bank app. I found the scheduled monthly payment for the nurse. That payment was my biggest chain. Canceling it was an act of war. I felt bad for the nurse, but I knew she would find other work. My parents would have to face their own lives for the first time. I cancelled the payment. I looked up from my phone into my father's eyes. I was a different person now. I held up the phone, showing them the first-class, one-way ticket. My mother gasped, her weak spell forgotten. You are right, I said, my voice flat and empty. I have been selfish with my time and my life. That ends now. I turned and walked to the door. My father shouted after me, Get back here. What about the nurse? What about us? I opened the door and walked out, the sound of their panic fading behind me. As I walked to my car, a chilling thought hit me. They know where I live. The freedom felt scary now. I drove straight to my apartment and packed a suitcase in a frenzy. I booked a car to the airport right away. I could not stay there. My phone lit up with a text from my father. It was cold and threatening. Come back. We can talk. Your mother is worse because of you. If you get on that plane, you are dead to us. You will have no family. Come back now or you will regret it. The words tried to hook me with guilt and fear. I took a deep breath. I did not reply. I went into my phone settings and I blocked both my father's number and my mother's number. It was the final cut. The car arrived. I left my apartment and did not look back. At the airport, I checked my bag and went to the gate. The plane was huge. I handed my one-way ticket to the flight attendant. She smiled and said, Welcome aboard. I stepped onto the plane and found my seat. As the doors closed with a loud thud, I realized I was free, but I was completely alone. And far below, I had just made 2 enemies who had nothing left to lose. The plane took off and I watched my old life disappear beneath the clouds. I was in the air, untethered. The flight was long. I slept in the comfortable seat and when I woke up, we were landing in Tokyo. The airport was huge and clean and busy. I got a taxi to a hotel in the city. For the first few days, I just walked. I got lost on purpose in the neon-lit streets. I ate food from small places where I just pointed at pictures. No one knew me. No one needed anything from me. The constant anxiety in my head was gone, replaced by a quiet peace. I found a small apartment and rented it for 3 months. I bought a futon and some plates. I was building a small, simple life that belonged only to me. 1 week after I arrived, I got an email. It was from my father's lawyer. The email said my parents were starting legal action to force me to pay for their care and support because I abandoned them. They were using my old financial support against me. The old fear tried to rise up and choke me. I looked out the window of my new apartment at the quiet street below. I felt the walls of my new life shake, but they did not fall. I felt a new kind of strength, hard and calm. I had crossed an ocean to be free. I was not going back. I wrote a short email back to the lawyer. I told him all future messages must go through my lawyer and to not contact me again. I did not have a lawyer yet, but it was a start. I was no longer their servant. I was a person ready to fight for the life I had built. The immediate storm had passed. I was safe in my new home, but I knew the legal battle looming on the horizon was a new kind of storm I would have to face. The lawyer's email sat in my inbox like a poisonous little seed. For a few days, I tried to ignore it, to just live my new life. I explored more of Tokyo, finding a quiet park where I could sit and read, and a small noodle shop run by an elderly couple who started to recognize me and would nod when I came in. But the email was always there in the back of my mind, a dark cloud on my peaceful horizon. I knew I couldn't just hope it would go away. My father had found a way to reach across the ocean, and he wouldn't stop with one email. The threat of "you will regret it" was now a real, legal document. I spent a nervous afternoon in my small apartment, searching online for English-speaking lawyers in Tokyo who handled international family law. It felt overwhelming. The websites were informal, complicated Japanese, and the little English I found used terms I didn't understand. My courage was fading. Maybe it would be easier to just send them some money, to make them go away. But then I remembered the flat, cold feeling of my father's voice when he said, "We need you here." I remembered the look in my mother's eyes, not of love, but of assessment, calculating how much more she could take from me. No, I would not go back. I would not give in. I found a law firm with a website that had a clear English section. I wrote them a careful email, explaining my situation in simple terms. I said my parents were trying to force me to support them financially even though I had moved to Japan and they were capable of working. I sent it and felt a small sense of accomplishment. I had taken a step. A few days later, I received a reply from a woman named Akira Tanaka, a legal assistant at the firm. She asked if I could come in for a meeting. My heart pounded. This was real. The office was in a modern, quiet building in a business district. It was nothing like the chaotic, neon streets I was getting used to. Everyone moved quietly and purposefully. I met with a lawyer named Mr. Sato. He was an older man with a calm, serious face. He listened patiently as I told him everything, my voice sometimes shaking. I told him about paying the mortgage, the nurse, the groceries. I told him about the one-way ticket and the text message. I showed him the email from my father's lawyer. Mr. Sato nodded slowly. He steepled his fingers. "This is not a simple matter," he said in careful English. "But Japanese courts generally believe children have a moral duty to support their parents, a concept called ayakoko. However, this is based on need. If your parents are healthy and capable of working, and you can prove you were financially exploited, the court may not force you to pay." He explained it would be a process. His firm would send a formal letter to my father's lawyer, stating my position and that all communication must go through them. This would likely not end it, he warned. It might make them angrier. But it was the first move in a long game. I agreed. I signed some papers and left the office. My wallet was much lighter, but my spirit felt a little heavier. I was now officially in a legal fight with my parents. I tried to return to my new routine, but the peace was fractured. Every time my phone buzzed with a new email, my stomach would clench. I started looking for a job, anything to keep my mind busy and to rebuild my savings. My Japanese was terrible, but I found work teaching basic English conversation at a small community center a few times a week. The pay was low, but the people were kind. It felt good to be useful in a way that didn't drain me. About 3 weeks after I hired Mr. Sato, I got an email from Akira. She said they had received a response from my father's lawyer. It was long and full of dramatic language, accusing me of being a heartless runaway, of causing my mother to have a nervous collapse, and of stealing from the family. They included what they claimed were medical bills. Mr. Sato's response was to calmly request full, itemized medical records and proof of their financial hardship. It was like a game of chess, and I was glad I had Mr. Sato on my side. The back and forth continued for another month. I focused on my new life. I learned how to use the complex train system. I made a friend, another English teacher named Kenji, who showed me a good place for cheap, tasty food. My life in Tokyo was becoming real. It was small and sometimes lonely, but it was mine. Then, the big email came. Akira wrote that my father's lawyer had suddenly broken off communication. They had stopped replying to Mr. Sato's requests for documentation. Mr. Sato suspected they had realized their case was weak, especially since they would have to pursue it internationally. The legal threat, for now, seemed to have faded away. The relief was so profound I almost cried. I went for a long walk that evening, through the bustling streets of Shinjuku. The neon lights didn't feel overwhelming anymore. They felt like a celebration. The noise was the sound of freedom. I had faced them down. I had won. I called Mr. Sato's office the next day and thanked him. I spent the next few months truly settling in. My life found a gentle rhythm. Teach a few classes, explore the city, have dinner with Kenji sometimes. The sharp edges of my fear and guilt had smoothed away. I thought less and less about my old life. One Saturday, I was cleaning my small apartment. I decided to finally go through the digital files on my old laptop, the one I had brought from home. I found a folder of scanned old family photos. My heart didn't ache when I saw them. I felt a distant sadness, like I was looking at pictures of strangers. I was about to close the folder when one photo caught my eye. It was a picture of my mother, taken years ago, before the condition. She was in the garden, laughing, her face turned up to the sun. She looked vibrant and alive. And in that moment, a question popped into my head, clear and sharp and unsettling. It was a question I had never, ever allowed myself to ask before. Was she ever really sick at all? Or was it all just a performance from the very beginning? The thought was so shocking it made me sit down. I looked at the laughing woman in the photo, and then I thought of the woman on the couch with the trembling teacup. They seemed like two different people. I had built my entire life around her illness. I had given up my money, my time, my youth. I had believed it was my duty, my burden to carry. But what if it was all a lie? What if the gilded cage was not built out of circumstance, but was a deliberate construction, designed by my parents to keep me trapped, to keep the money and the comfort flowing? The peace I had fought so hard for settled back over me, but it was a different kind of peace now. It was stronger. It was based on truth, not on escape. I was free. I had a life. I had friends. I had a future. I closed the laptop. I did not have the answers to my new questions, and I was not sure I ever would. Maybe some truths are better left buried far away, across an ocean. My new life was here, in the present, in this small apartment in Tokyo. The past could not hurt me anymore. I was finally completely free. But as I looked out the window at the setting sun painting the city skyline in shades of orange and purple, that one quiet question still lingered in the back of my mind, a tiny, persistent echo. Was she ever really sick? I knew I would probably never know for sure, and maybe, just maybe, that was okay. The story of my old life was over. It was time to start a new one.